Hello and welcome back to the Try for More YouTube channel. Today, just like promised last week, today we are talking all things the bike. All right, and so we're kicking off the first handful of episodes specifically talking about taking on your very first triathlon so that you know there is truly a space for anybody in this realm. My name is Elise and I am a level 1 USAT certified coach. I am a nutrition coach, a swim coach. I also have had the absolute privilege over the last couple years to work for a company in a local triathlon company, racing company. We do more than just triathlons, but a racing company in the Metro Detroit area. More specifically, we are out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And the company specifically, if you are looking for a good racing company to look up, from swims to marathons to triathlons, is called Epic Races. And over the course of my time with the company, I have gotten the privilege of talking to a lot of first timers, hearing their concerns, hearing their worries. And so I just wanted to be able to bring that here to those people who are looking to take on their very first triathlon. That's where we're going to start, looking to take on their very first triathlon so that you truly know your barrier to entry, as we like to put it, is actually a lot lower than some of those people out there might like you to think. And especially when it comes to the bike, because there are so many things when we talk about the bike that look fun. There are so many awesome things out there, but the truth is, at the end of the day, if you are going to take on your very first triathlon, you don't need all of those things. So today, I am going to start with one miss I made from last week from the swim, as well as addressing the 4 things you truly need from the bike, and then a very quick list of all the other things that you don't need, as well as just going over some different distances. Actually, we're going to start with those distances a little bit earlier on, just so that you understand what's going on when you see different race lengths as well. So first off, the miss I made last week. So I did mention when it came to wetsuits that you could go to Facebook Marketplace to purchase a wetsuit. And that is true. You can go to Facebook Marketplace, a great place to look, but you can also look for companies in your area, or even get online and search like wetsuit rentals. I know some companies do wetsuit rentals. I don't know, like some big names to look into. Like Zone 3 is one that the company I work for specifically works with, and I do believe they do wetsuit rentals. So Zone and then the number 3. So there's options out there when it comes to that. So don't think that just because you need a wetsuit that's an end all be all, because they can be rather pricey. All right, so when we are talking about different triathlon distances, I know one that gets a very big, large name is that Ironman distance, that Ironman brand. They've done such a good job getting their name out there and branding their events, because they're tough. 140.6 miles is tough work, and it is a challenge that so many of us like to take on. But the truth is, if you're starting out in triathlon, you do not need to go all in at 140.6. And actually, I don't recommend going that being your very first triathlon. Although, if you go back to the intro, I did mention that that's where I started. There are things I've learned along the way, and there are reasons why I don't recommend now going all the way there. So you've got your 140.6, which your bike at that level is 112 miles for your bike. And then you go down to your half distance, which is 70.3, your half Ironman distance, and that bike is 56 miles. And then we go down into what you're probably going to see more locally in your area that are going to be associated with those local racing companies. And here's where we have our sprint and our Olympic distance. So I know I did that a little backwards. Your sprint is your shorter, your Olympic is a little bit longer. And your sprint distance bike is going to be somewhere in the range of 20 kilometers or approximately 12 and a half miles. And then your Olympic distance is going to be somewhere in the range of about 40 kilometers or about 25 miles. And I say in the range because when we are sanctioning things here in the United States through USA Triathlon, and we are putting in the forms to get that race approved with them, there is actually a grace distance, if you will. So where in order for something to qualify for a sprint distance, it just has to be between certain distances. And same thing with the Olympic. I do believe the sprint is somewhere between like 8 to 18. I don't know. I'm going to take the chart and I'll link it here in the notes as well. And like your Olympic is somewhere in the range of like 18 to 31. So like there's a pretty good gap. So yes, these are sprints and these are Olympic distance, but just something to be aware of, that just because you're signed up for a sprint or you're signed up for an Olympic distance doesn't mean that these are the exact, like you're going to actually bike 12.5 miles exactly or 25 miles exactly. Like that doesn't mean that. So there is that grace window in there when it comes to races. All right, so diving into the things that you need to take on the bike. So first and foremost, you need clothes. So you're coming out of the swim, you're going to hop on the bike, you need clothes. Whatever you're swimming in, you're gonna bike in, except that wetsuit. That wetsuit can come off. If you want to throw on a different dry shirt or dry top, that's totally fine. I know some ladies, depending on the weather, what's going on, I do this sometimes if it's really cold air temperature, just because I'm somebody who has a really hard time warming up. I'll swim in like my tri bottoms and then like a sports bra, and I'll throw my tri top over top. Some guys might even decide, I don't know if I said that right. If I said that right, I feel like I just lost my train of thought there. So I will swim under my wetsuit and my tri-kit bottoms, like my biking shorts, and then a sports bra. And I come out going to transition, I'll put a top on. Just because, like I said, I have a really hard time warming up. So this is something I have found that can potentially help me to stay warmer. But the guys might swim without a top and throw a shirt on as they go out. But either way, whatever clothes you're going into that water with, you've got to be prepared to ride your ride on it, because I mean, they dry off pretty quickly. You know, if you're not going to do bike shorts, like if you're doing that Olympic distance or that sprint distance and you're like, bike shorts, we're just going to go in a pair of like spandex shorts. That's great. That is a fantastic option. They dry out usually pretty quickly. So that's a great plan. So you really just need clothes that you're comfortable getting wet and clothes that you're comfortable then hopping on the bike with, that you know are going to dry out pretty fast. All right, shoes. You just need a pair of shoes. They don't have to be anything fancy. This is going to get into those things that you don't need, but you don't need anything fancy. Just a pair of tennis shoes and some pedals on that bike to get you going. That's all you need. Pretty straightforward there. Socks, no socks, your call. Whatever you've been training in, go with that. All right, number 3, helmet. Everyone's got to wear a helmet. You actually will be disqualified from the race if you don't bike with a helmet. This is a big safety thing. And trust me, nobody wants to be in an accident, but you especially don't want to be in an accident without protecting your head. So make sure that you have a helmet and that you bring that helmet with you and you are ready to put that on before you take off on your bike. But with that being said, you should actually also be training in that helmet too. So if you are someone who is like, you don't really like helmets. I know helmets when I was growing up weren't cool. Find a helmet that you like, that you feel good in, and it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It doesn't need to be anything expensive, but you do need a helmet. You got to protect your head. All right, and then the 4th thing is the bike. You got to have a bike. Now, you're doing training. You don't necessarily even have to have a bike for training. You could be doing your training on an exercise bike at the gym, right? Like you don't have to even own a bike. And so therefore you could rent a bike or borrow a bike from a friend, but you have to have a bike to be able to do a triathlon. So make sure that you have your bike squared up and you know what bike you're going to go with. Now, if you're going to be going, if you've got a fancy bike, if you ended up with a road bike from somebody, which is honestly like, that's how I ended up with my first racing bike. I got it from my aunt, which was phenomenal. She just was ready for a different bike. I got it from her, and oh boy, are those a little bit different than just your average, like everyday leisurely bike. So be mindful of that. If you are looking at, well, what bike do I want to use? What bike do I want to race on for this day? Go with something that you are comfortable with, because if you are going to try to upgrade your bike, the skinnier the tires, sometimes the easier those tires pop. So then you'll want to also know how to change a flat tire. Just comes with more things to think about depending on the type of bike that you're going with. And talking to somebody at your local bike shop is a great option for that. I didn't bring everything up in terms of what I keep in my spare tire kit, because I don't feel like everybody needs to be on a fancy road bike to start with. So I'll do an episode later on specifically talking about like, what do I have in my spare tire kit that I have on my bike, all the things I ride with. But like I said, to take on your very first sprint or Olympic tri, depending on the bike, go with something that you're comfortable with. Go with something that is like your never fails me type thing. You're just trying to get through your first one, right? All right, so you've probably already caught on to maybe some of the things that you don't need. So the reason I could say that we're going to do a pretty quick list of the things you don't need is because it's this: everything else. It's truly that simple. Everything else is what you don't need. So you're going to see things about, like, you need this watch, you need this bike computer, you need these type of shoes, you need these clip pedals, you need this type of bike, you need this hydration system, you need this type of triathlon kit, you need this type of biking clothes. No, you actually don't. Now, if this is something to where you decide that you're going to, level up, and like you're going to decide that you want to, and by level up, I mean like distances. So you're going to take on a 70.3 or 140.6. There are definitely certain things that you are going to want to add into what you have. And that's not bad. It's a really great adventure to take on one of those. So you will want to be able to add more to what you have. But for taking on your very first one, which I do recommend it being a sprint or an Olympic try instead of going all in at like the 70.3 or the 140.6, you don't need those things. They're great. You can say, like, put them on a wish list and save up for them so that you're not going to go broke. From just the bike alone, from everything I listed off, you can probably, or you've already seen it, how it's very quickly everything adds up, and very quickly all of a sudden your racing money is poof gone, or all your fun money is poof gone. And that's because these things are expensive. So don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't start to think that you need all of these things. Yeah. Is a watch nice to know, like, your distance, potentially like your pace, how long you've been going? Absolutely. You can do that with like a very basic like start stopwatch. You don't need necessarily like the latest, greatest smartwatch or like Garmin or whatever that's out there. As these bike places and these watch places are gonna, like, if this ever gets to them, they are going to absolutely hate me for telling people not to buy this stuff. But like, it's true. Honestly, to get started, you don't need it. However, the watches, we all tend to, if we're working out pretty regularly, I think a lot of us tend to have a little bit of a nicer watch than just like your basic functions. And that is a great thing for you to have with you. You can, use it as reference points, use it as data points, collecting. If you need to keep an eye on your heart rate, that's a really good thing to have with. You just got to keep in mind, like, this, like, detecting from here versus like where your heart actually is, take it all with a grain of salt, because this is not necessarily the most accurate place to measure your heart rate. So, that really pretty much sums up the bike. It's, you need a lot less than people try to tell you you do. The one other thing I am going to throw in here, though, because a lot of your local triathlons, because they are shorter distances, the bike isn't going to have those aid stations, or like aid stations, water filling stations, or refueling stations, however you want to call them, but places to get water out on the course. So depending on the length of race that you're doing or the temperature that it is outside, you will probably want to carry some liquid on you, or at least have liquid in the transition area so that you can grab a swig of that as you're buzzing in, buzzing out. I would recommend having a water bottle on you, just because I have a water bottle with water in it, because your those support places are not going to be out there on the bike. But I do plan to dive a little bit more into that when I specifically talk about fueling, and that is to come, because the fueling is a very, like, it's an important part of your race day, to make sure that no matter which distance you're doing, like, you have the energy to complete it. So I will dive into that, but I wanted to briefly touch on that today, just so as you're going through and you're listing things out that you need for the bike, you have a water bottle in your scope of things that you probably want to add in there, especially if it's going to be a hot day. So at the end of the day, don't get hung up on needing all of these fancy things and all of these gadgets that places are telling you, or things that are telling you that you need. You're taking on your very first one. The goal is to have fun and to finish it. That's a huge accomplishment. And don't get sucked down into that rabbit hole until you decide that you're going to go back for more. Because I tell you what, you cross that first finish line, and it does start to pull you back in, because it is a very good, satisfying feeling of accomplishing something. So, hold off on those fancy things until you've decided that you want to do more than one triathlon. All right, that wraps it up today. All things bike, what you need to take on your very first bike portion of your very first triathlon. If you learned something here today, if you found value here, please share this. I'm just so excited to bring you all this information, this content, because I know that there are more people looking to get into the sport of triathlon, and it can seem very overwhelming, and it just doesn't need to be as overwhelming as maybe sometimes we think it is. So I'd love for you to share this and let people know that what we're doing here. Next week, we're going to come back and we're going to talk all things run. And that's going to be another really short list of those things that you need. But until then, have a great day. Get out there, work hard, train hard, and just keep trying for more.